it looks to me that there is a lot of rot, and the whole place is smelling. And the urgent stable, Mr. Falana, I hope we will be able as a people to come together to rid our country from all of this mess.
Nigeria is the only country in the world today where results of elections are determined by judges. It shouldn't be so. We have just witnessed in Liberia, a country that Nigeria assisted to restore political stability. We just witnessed an election there. Recently, we witnessed an election, a successful election in Sierra Leone. Again, another country assisted by Nigeria to have law and order restored.
Political power is not going to be served in a restaurant. It's not served in a la carte. It's what we are doing. It's being determined to do it. At all costs, fight for it, grab it, snatch it.
Yes, sir.
And run with it.
Yes, sir. Jagaban. Jagaban.
So if these countries can organize elections, why are we asking judges to determine the result of our elections with respect to the decisions of the Court of Appeal? That is not the end of the road. All those who are dissatisfied will have to go to the Supreme Court. But if you look at what happened in Lagos, why is different from Plateau, is that you are being told in the case of Plateau, there was a judgment of the High Court to the effect that primaries have to be conducted. The judgment, as usual, was dishonored, disregarded, disobeyed, and the elections went on. I think the last time I can recall that the Supreme Court berated the Nigerian political class to learn to comply with the doctrine of least spending was the case of Mr. Peter Obi and INEC. When in 2007, in spite of the case of Mr. Peter Obi that was pending the High Court, INEC went and proceeded to hold the election. The Supreme Court made the point that it was a risk on the part of INEC to engage in a wasteful exercise by conducting that election while the case of Mr. Peter Obi was pending. Now, if we are being told here that the court ordered the primaries be held and the primaries were not held, and the election took place on the basis of the primaries that were not held, there are problems. I do hope that the Supreme Court will make a definitive pronouncement on this. Again, it's different from Kano, where you are being told now that voters can be punished. It's a very dangerous judicial policy to punish sanctioned voters for the mistake of electoral officer. We are being told here that 165,000 votes are wasted. They are invalid because some electoral officers refused or committed an error by not stamping them. How does that affect the validity of the election? If you recall again the case of Yaradua, Buhari and Yaradua, even the election material, the ballot papers were not serialized, they were not marked, but the Supreme Court came to the conclusion that the petitioner, General Buhari, on that occasion, did not impeach the integrity of the election. So I do hope that this time around the Supreme Court will again resolve this needless controversy surrounding the stamping of ballot paper by INEC officials who have not been recommended for any discipline or any sanction. So this is why these judgments will have to be reviewed.
I'd like to ask, I mean, the Electoral Law 2022 was amended in respect of pre-election matters and how much of effect it can have on the outcome of an election.
Well, again, there is some inconsistency here as to whether pre-election cases should be carried over and determined after the conduct of election. I have always criticized that. And my position is that all pre-election matters be concluded before election, general election, and all election petitions challenging the conduct of elections be concluded before the inauguration of incoming government. But we have an incongruous situation whereby pre-election matters are carried over and taken after the election. It amounts to a waste if the elections are set aside on the basis of pre-election matter. And it shouldn't be so. And this is the kind of problems we are trying to encounter now. Again, as I said, the ball is now in the court of the Supreme Court.
Now, interestingly, I will come to that deliberation which Plaque, as an organization, Clement Wanko and his friends have put together to ensure that there is a review of the electoral law in respect of some of the shenanigans that happen within the political parties going into an election that makes a mockery of our election and some of the discrepancy and some of the unbelievable behaviors of the politicians in our election in broad daylight and how they subvert the rule of law in our elections. And I'd like you to touch on those things that you discussed at that meeting on Friday and Saturday, and how we can jumpstart the process of fixing the electoral law. But it also looks to me, Mr. Falana, that politicians are already looking at the vacuum and at the vulnerability of our electoral law to subvert our election. Don't you think?
No, the election, the laws are there. But we have a political culture that allows members of the ruling class, and it's not limited to election. We have a culture, a political culture, that allows members of the ruling class, the bourgeoisie, to ignore our laws, to ignore court orders, and they are the system. And that is why you're having these problems. The law is very clear on internal democracy, but you have people who call themselves chieftains of political parties who make a mockery of internal democracy in the parties, whereas you are supposed to have consensus candidates. They impose candidates and they call them consensus candidates. They subvert the electoral process by talking of indirect primaries, instead of allowing members of the political party to participate in direct primary. These are some of the issues we discussed on Friday, Saturday. And we can't go on like this. Now, once you have dealt with the question of the political culture, whereby all violators of the law, no matter how highly placed, will be brought to book. And that is what is going on in America now. President Trump, in all his majesty, in all his powers, is being arraigned. He's facing 4 cases. 4 criminal cases. One of them or 2 of them have to do with electoral fraud and insurrection. But here, you just had an insurrection in Rivers State. Nobody is talking of those who conveyed the House of Assembly in the night, those who set fire on the House of Assembly. Nobody is talking about that. But in the US, President Trump is standing trial for the insurrection, the attack on Capitol on 6th of January 2021. But in the case of Nigeria, it's business as usual. And that is why we are insisting that we must now set up the Electoral Offences Commission, Electoral Offences Tribunal, to try all those who violate the provisions of the Electoral Act before and during the election and even after the election by manipulating election results. But once you don't do this, you witness, as we just witnessed 2 weeks ago, the shameful elections that took place in Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo, whereby in 3 states, 92,000 police personnel, 22,500 civil defense personnel, FRSC, SSS, EFCC, and the rest of them, altogether numbering about 140,000 security personnel to manage election, to man election in 3 states. At the end of the day, somebody was thrown to the river in Bayelsa. 4 people were killed in Kogi State. There was snatching of ballot boxes. Money was, the EFCC confiscated about 11 million naira. But at the end of the day, are we sure that these criminal elements are going to be tried? So again, we agreed on that.
Political power is not going to be served in a restaurant. It not served in a la carte. It's what we are doing. It's being determined to do it. At all costs, fight for it, grab it, snatch it.
Yes, sir.
I'm wrong with you.
Yes, sir. Jagaban. Jagaban. Yes,
we agree that the movement of judges, particularly sitting judges, should be completely eliminated. We are suggesting that retired judges, we have a pool of retired judges who should constitute election petition tribunals and appellate chambers so that we can allow the regular courts to continue to handle cases of other citizens who have nothing to do with politics. Now, once you can do that, now we are not going to have this problem of congestion of cases in the regular court. Again, we are suggesting that INEC, the onus should be on INEC to prove that credible elections are being conducted. The onus should not be on petitioner the petitioners who have no access to election material. Again, we suggested once an election is concluded, in no less than 7 days, all the election materials must be uploaded and transmitted to the website of INEC, so that whoever wants to file an election petition can do so without going through the current problems. The other point is that
political power is not going to be served in a restaurant. It not served in a la carte. It's what we are doing. It's being determined to do it. At all costs, fight for it, grab it, snatch it.
Yes, sir.
I'm wrong with you.
Yes, sir. Jagaban. Jagaban. Yes,
that if you are going to file petition, again, we suggested and we agree that we shouldn't have a situation where all those who contested election will file election petitions. In other words, this battle, the legal battle, should be between the winner of the election or the candidate declared by the INEC and the runner-up. So what is the business of the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, or even 10th, candidate filing election petitions? So we have this suggestion. But the other one, which is very important, is that all pre-election cases be conducted before election, be concluded, and all post-election, all election petitions be concluded, be tried by courts and concluded before the inauguration of incoming government. Now, internal democracy must now be promoted in the parties, a situation where the president of the country or the governors of states say that their leaders of political parties is undemocratic. It's not part of our law. Only the elected officials of political parties are leaders of the parties. The president and governors are members of political parties. So the question of going to hold a meeting of political party in the presidential villa or in the state house in any state is illegal, because the presidential villa is for all Nigerians, for all political parties. So the ruling party cannot hold political party meetings in the villa. Ditto for the state. So that once the president and governor are made to realize that they are members of political parties and not leaders of these political parties, imposing candidates on the parties, we then begin to talk of democracy and the use of money. We have also suggested that the National Assembly should stipulate what amount candidates can pay by way of nomination fee. So you don't have a situation where a political party will ask candidates, go and pay 100 million naira, go and pay 50 million naira, and so on and so forth. So we dwelt on many areas of the Electoral Act now, where we feel that there are some lacunae that will have to be addressed. But a most important one is the political culture. Today, the worst elections in Africa are conducted in the local governments by state electoral commission that are even headed by judges and senior lawyers. So, but again, because people believe nothing will happen, there's no sanction for impunity. That is why we're in a mess with respect to election petitions in our country and respect for the rights of our people.
All right. So let me ask you this, Mr. Falana. There are accusations, and we've seen some of the politicians coming forward with, and if you go on IREV, perhaps some of those things that you see, the accusations of revealing of election results. How devastating, I mean, if validated and found out to be true by our court, how devastating could this be? Could this be the new tactics by the by the political class to subvert our electoral process?
Now, this is where we blame judges instead of the members of the political class. Where you fail to hold valid primaries, there is a provision under the law that whatever results, whatever elections that are based on invalid primaries or no primaries at all, will be no election. So you don't blame the courts. If a political party fails to field candidates who have emerged from valid primaries. Secondly, if politicians fail to allow the democratic process to take place, if they simply impose candidates, those candidates may have problems. Again, one issue that we discussed is that before 2010, the screening of candidates going to contest elections was the task imposed on INEC. The political class took that away from INEC, that only political parties will screen candidates. We now discover that candidates are not screened. Candidates with questionable credentials are allowed to contest elections. Now, those cases now arrive. We are now blaming judges. So we have suggested that the screening of candidates should now be the business of the political party regulatory commission that Waste Panel had recommended. That is, you unbundle INEC, you are going to have the INEC as it is, but you take the powers to prosecute electoral offender and ask the Electoral Offences Commission to do that. The political parties regulatory commission would deal with screening of candidates, registration of political parties, delineation of constituencies, and so on and so forth, so that INEC can face squarely the task of conducting election. Now, you saw what happened in Kogi, in Kogi Central, where results had been, ballot papers had been printed, right? And when they were brought, the voters protested. Now, that has nothing to do with the Independent National Electoral Commission. This was just the act of politicians who have no respect for the democratic rights of the people. Now, but again, at the end of the day, the votes were counted. So what do you make of that? Oh, everybody should go to court. Again, we are tasking the members of the tribunal that will be set up to determine matters they know nothing about because they were not on ground when these monumental, violations of the Electoral Act were committed by well-known people, and nothing will happen to them. So these are the problems we have to address. Unless we can get members of the political class sanctions for impunity, we're not going to get out of this crisis with respect to conduct of elections.
All right.
And I'm happy.
Yeah.
I just confirmed from the INEC chairman that not less than 197 electoral offenders are going to be put on trial very soon. I mean, some of those who rigged the February-March election. But what happened 2 weeks ago was by far worse than all the complaints we brought up with respect to the elections of February and March. And so you then ask yourself, what will happen when we are going to have election in about 28 states? No, the other suggestion we have made, hold all elections in one day. The 4 elections should be held in one day. Instead of holding presidential National Assembly elections and then governorship and House of Assembly elections, we can hold the 4 elections in one day and save the huge costs that we currently spend on elections. Thank you very much.
I'd like to take you up on what SERAP budget and some other over 30 individuals and organizations have done. They have challenged, or they're challenging the powers of the president, because he's enshrined in the Constitution the powers of the president to nominate members of the board of INEC, including resident electoral commissioners and the national commissioners of INEC, and based on issues related to partisanship, which is also one of the criteria listed in the Constitution, that anyone that will fill in those positions cannot be a member of a political party. So SERAP and these organizations have gone to court. Those who are believing that there is a gradual and there is a systemic and strategic overtake and grabbing of the independence of INEC. Do you see it as such?
Again, Sheung, this has to do with the impunity of members of the ruling class, the political class. We came out, I personally pointed out that 4 of the 10 resident electoral commissioners nominated by President Tinubu are card-carrying members or sympathizers of political parties. And we brought out the facts, the evidence. What happened at the end of the day? The Senate simply asked them to take a bow, again, which is a mockery of democracy. Screening of candidates cannot in any manner be reduced to taking a bow, because you are supposed to investigate the record of the candidate and find out whether indeed it is true that these are card-carrying members of political parties. That duty was not performed by the Senate. Again, members of the political class. Hence, we are bringing in the judiciary again. Whereas, if the political class, if members of the political class are united in respecting the laws of the country, in ensuring that non-partisan members who go to conduct the election will not have this mess. Again, if you want to do what some other countries are doing, if you want to have members of the ruling party, you must also have members of the opposition.
But Mr. Falana, apologies about it. Yeah, so sorry. But civil society organization, individuals, in fact, on this program, on Channels Television, we pointed it out to the National Assembly. Pictures, videos of those who are nominated by the president, who are members, who are said to be members of political parties, those who are even said to be staff and workers working with politicians, and they are nominated. But, I mean, will the Senate or those who screen them say they did not watch television on that day or did not see the petitions of the civil society organizations on that day? No,
what the decision was to rush the process. some of the civil society organizations were busy in court filing affidavits because your petition must be accompanied an affidavit. So they were filing affidavits. And as soon as the information got to the Senate leadership, so the screening was wrong. There was no screening. So just a question, yes, who are these people? Take a bow and go. That was all. It was not a screening exercise. Again, that is coming up in court. And that is the point I'm making, that members of the political class in Nigeria deliberately violate the law. And I'm not talking of members of the ruling party alone. I mean, you heard of a very highly important politician who said some time ago that, during the 2003 election, I persuaded the president to concede a particular state because my friend was the governor there. Please, let's allow this one to retain his state. That means what they were doing then was that they were fixing results. And no media person has questioned the candidate. So you guys were rigging elections at the highest level in the country. And that is what is going on, unless we insist that no matter how high you are, like the late Lord Daniel of the United Kingdom will say, no matter how high you are, the law is higher than you. But we again agreed at the conference we had last week. Come, this business of spending 180 days in election petitions should no longer be the case today. If you technologize the electoral process, whereby we have the beavers, the report of the beavers machine, that's its accreditation, and then you have transmitted results. All you need are two reports. The report generated by the beavers machines and the result transmitted by INEC. Once you have those two reports, why are you going to be in a tribunal for 180 days? In Kenya, with those two reports, election petitions are determined by the Supreme Court in presidential elections within 14 days. In Kenya, in Malawi, in Zambia. So why is our own different? That you want to spend 180 days in an election petition tribunal, you spend 60 days in the court of appeal, and in governorship election, you spend 60 days, additional 60 days. So we must now embrace technology with respect to our election, cooperate with INEC, and ensure that credible elections are conducted in our country so that the waste of resources encountered in election petition tribunal will no longer be the case.
All right, let's go to a break. We'll take a breather. Well, Mr. Falana, I will take you. I don't know if you have seen what Olumide Akpata, the former president of the Nigerian Bar Association, said at the International Bar Association conference about what has been described as a capture of the judiciary. If it doesn't hurt the heart of anyone who is a patriotic Nigerian, then perhaps something is definitely wrong. I'll probably try to play that video for you so that I can get your comment. Because we're looking at the appointment of Supreme Court justices and where we need to go. Because if there is a capture of the judiciary, if the judiciary is in the hands and the pockets of politicians, then we are doomed as a people. I'd like to get your comment on that. Plus, what is happening in Osun State? The chief judge of that state, the action of the governor, and some of what a lot of people have criticized in the procedure of suspending or disciplining a judicial officer as stipulated by law. I'll get your comment when we return from this break, Mr. Falana. Join us again, everyone. So much, everyone, for staying with us on the program. Mr. Femi Falana, a very senior lawyer and rights activist, senior advocate of Nigeria, has been speaking with us on the program tonight. Thank you so much, Leonard Silk, for your time tonight. Those who are worried about the manner in which, because most of the elections now are now being decided not only at the polling units, but now in the courtroom, which is like the second layer of the polling unit, where 1 to 3 to 5 judges are now the determinants of the mandate of the people. But let me play this video that I found online. It's the former president of the NBA, Olumide Akpata, whom you know very well. I'd like to get your comment about what is a threat to our nation, a threat to our judiciary, if indeed that arm of government is supposed to be the last hope of the masses. But this allegation coming from someone who was the #1 in the Nigerian bar just about a few months ago is saying this, that there is a capture of the judiciary from what is found out, because he sat down with judges and justices of the court, and this is what he said he found out in this social media video. Take a listen.
We think that the IBA, being the global voice of the legal profession, has a role to play in dealing with what I call judiciary capture. Because while I was president, what I found out was that there is a deliberate attempt on the part of the political class in Nigeria to capture the judiciary. And that has very insidious, very invidious consequences for the rule of law in Nigeria. And it is deliberate, it is intentional, and it is achieving results for them. And what we find is that, firstly, from the point of view of appointments, as president of the bar, I sat on the interview committee for judges, and what I saw was bizarre.
There are nominations now for the Supreme Court, empty slot in the Supreme Court, and if this is coming, and that's going to be for the consideration of the NJC. Now, if Olumide Akpata, a former president of the bar, come forward on an international platform, says that there is a direct attack on the judiciary, an attempt to capture the judiciary, how do you find that, Mr. Falana?
Well, I sympathize with, I understand Mr. Olu Akpata's frustrations. But for me, I do not agonize. I tell my colleagues, organize. How do you effect a change? What is the position of the Nigerian Bar Association in the NJC? We have 5 members. Mr. Olu Akpata, at the time he was making that revelation in an IBA forum, he was a member of the NJC. We have 2 senior lawyers in the Federal Judicial Service Commission. What do these members do to problematize, to cause a crisis in those bodies if people are not qualified to be appointed judges are brought for consideration? Secondly, when a judge is going to be appointed in Nigeria, or judges are going to be appointed, the names are sent to the branches of the Nigerian Bar Association for comments. What type of comments do our colleagues, what do they write about these candidates? You also find that in the entire 125 branches of the NBA, these letters inviting comment are never taken to the meetings. So it's a secret affair between the candidates and the bar leaders. So at the end of the day, for me, it's difficult for lawyers to go out and challenge the appointment of judge. And that is why I'm happy. I think in Kogi State, some senior lawyer have just written a stinker challenging the move by the state government to appoint people who have nothing to do with the legal system as judges in that state. So the bar must be proactive in ensuring that only candidates who are qualified are appointed judges in our country. With respect to the appellate chambers, again, I was pleading with legislators recently in Lagos. I'm talking of National Assemblymen, particularly the Senate, shown to appoint a Supreme Court justice in America for every president is a privilege. And it's a political opportunity that every president will want to take advantage of. So, and that is why in the Senate, it is not about taking a bow. It is that you want to be a judge. In the screening exercise, all the major judgments that have been written by a judge who wants to go to the Supreme Court or to the Court of Appeal will be put before him or her. He or she will be asked questions. Can you justify this, your philosophy about law? Can you justify this decision that you handed down 15, 20 years ago for us to consider you as a material fit to go to the Supreme Court? Now, again, we have to begin with this ongoing exercise. We must interrogate the candidates. We must find out about their qualifications, the judgments they have written, and happily, the NJC has asked us to ignore the list that is circulating in town or in the social media. But the exercise must be thorough. Those who are qualified must be appointed without religious or ethnic considerations, so that now that a higher responsibility is placed on our judges, like he said, showing a situation where 5 or 12 people will now determine who the president of a country should be. We must ensure that we have the best in the judiciary. For my colleagues, we must stop complaining. Let us take advantage of the provisions of the Constitution and other laws to ensure that we have the best in the judiciary. Yes, it's not unusual for politicians to want to capture, not only the judiciary, they want to capture the media, they want to capture everywhere. But it's our duty as lawyers to mobilize Nigerians to ensure that we have the best judges in our country. So, with all the complaints I practice outside the country, I can tell you, the Nigerian representing the country in the ECOWAS court, the Nigerian representing the country in the African Court on Human and People's Rights, the Nigerian representing the country in the International Criminal Court are doing very well because they were appointed properly. So we must now ensure that the international best practices that we adopt in appointing judges who are going to international courts will also be domesticated here, so that at the end of the day, we have a judiciary that we can be proud of. In those days, Nigerian judges were sought for in the Commonwealth. And that is why we once had the chief judge of Uganda, the chief judge of Botswana, and and some other countries, the Gambia, were Nigerians. And so we must rebuild the judiciary. There are challenges, of course. We must rebuild the judiciary, and the situation is not insurmountable.
Do you fear perhaps what some Nigerians, some politicians have also raised eyebrows about the appointments in the judiciary, appointments in INEC? And Atiku Abubakar, for example, is saying that Nigeria is sliding into a one-party state. Do you have that kind of feeling that that is what is going on in our country today, Mr. Falana?
For sure. Well, for once, even when the PDP was in power, we were told that the party was going to be in power for 100 years. It was the concept of a one-party state. That those years were later reduced to 60 before Nigerians threw out the PDP after 16 years. The APC had also said that it was going to be in power forever. Again, at the right time. I am convinced beyond any shadow of doubt that Nigerians want to terminate impunity and continuity of oppression of our people and economic destruction. So Nigerians also have the right. And that's what is going on in other African countries. You've just seen it in Liberia. I was in Accra, Ghana last week. I mean, the elections will be next year. But you can almost predict which political party will form the government in Ghana next year. So we must also get to that stage where we can, with mathematical exactitude or certainty, predict the outcome of our elections.
Mr. Falana, all these judgments of court that we are seeing right now, does it give you a feeling, a dangerous feeler, about where we are headed as a people? Somehow.
No, the judgments and the elections, my worry is that once people are forced to lose confidence in the ballot box, and this is the danger of what is going on, they will then begin to think of alternatives, which may be very dangerous and subversive for political stability. So the members of the political class, for me, I'm not bothered. For me, I think these guys are trying to fast track the revolutionary change that is inevitable in our country. Yes.
I mean, where do we then... So, Mr. Falana, because I would like you to touch on the issue of Osun State and the chief judge in that state, and procedurally, how should a chief judge be removed if it comes to the removal of a chief judge? But, I mean, I look at what is going on, and you see moments in our country where we've had judicial reforms. Under a Lateef Fagbemi leadership, as Attorney General and Minister of Justice, do you see capacity? And under this government of Bola Tinubu, do you see capacity of a judicial reforms, although a political regime in place, but partisan political leadership, but then there are those who are expecting that there will be a nationalistic, a patriotic attitude in changing our country. Do you see that happening at all, Mr. Falana?
Yes, based on the collective struggle of the Nigerian people to have a new country. Right now, Sheung, there's nothing to write home about. Anywhere you turn your eye, you can't find any modicum of readiness on the part of the political class to face the problems confronting the country. Even when the law is very clear, when the constitution is very clear, with profound respect in the case of Osun, the House of Assembly was not well advised. Hence, it has goofed in a very embarrassing manner. The House of Assembly, or a House of Assembly, lacks the power under the current democratic dispensation to investigate a chief judge, ask her to step aside, direct the governor or the executive to appoint an acting chief judge. Where has the House of Assembly got those powers? And to worsen the case, there was already a case in court, and the National Industrial Court has granted an injunction ordering parties to maintain the status quo. So you cannot move to suspend the chief judge. But I have been informed, I have been reliably informed by the Honorable Attorney General of that state, Mr. Bada, Mr. Falana, the governor of the state has sent a letter to the National Judicial Council to complain. And that is what is required by the Constitution. Anybody who does not like the conduct of a judge, anybody who has allegations of misconduct involving a judge or a chief judge, you are required to petition the National Judicial Council. There are a number of cases, particularly the case of Elenu and Attorney General of the Federation, where the Supreme Court took its time to explain that whereas Section 292 empowers the House of Assembly or a governor to deliver a speech in the House of Assembly alleging misconduct on the part of a chief judge, and then the chief judge may be removed. Now, before you can do that, there has to be an investigation conducted by the NJC. It is the report of that investigation that will be sent to the governor, which cannot form the basis of the address, to the House of Assembly by the governor. And if the address is supported by 2/3 majority, the chief judge who be sacked, but to set aside the procedure set out by the Constitution. It cannot be done. So the
it just reminds me, Mr. Falana,
suspension cannot stand. Cannot stand.
It reminds me of what happened in Ekiti after 16 years of the suspension of Justice Aladejano, and this NJC are now reinstated the CJ after 16 years. I mean, if you are to advise the
not the CJ.
The judge,
and that is why, that is why no judge in your state, no high court in your state will allow himself or herself to be made an acting chief judge without the imprimatur of the National Judicial Council. Any judge that does that stands to be sacked. And that is why no judge has shown up to be sworn in as an acting chief judge on the directive of the House of Assembly, because the House of Assembly lacks the virus, lacks the power to appoint an acting chief judge or to order the governor to appoint an acting chief judge without going through the NJC. So I believe that with the comments from lawyers and other interest groups, I'm sure the House of Assembly and all the principal stakeholders will have gone back to the drawing table by studying the relevant provisions of the Constitution. And as I said, I am now told that the governor has sent a petition to the National Judicial Council on the matter.
It looks to me that there is a lot of rot, and the whole place is smelling. And the urgent table, Mr. Falana, I hope we will be able as a people to come together to rid our country from all of this mess.